Alright guys, anybody that's watched the last couple of my videos and listened to me on some podcasts and stuff with Captain Cummings running his and Jay's Comics and stuff, there's been a lot of talk about a certain book that I haven't been able to find around here. It's almost like it was an urban legend down here. And yet all across YouTube and a lot of the comic book news channels and stuff, man, this thing's getting praised. So finally, the comic book shop that I'm at ended up finally getting some of these books. So, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you enough of that. Alright, so basically I got the first 3 issues of the Saga on this. Alright, these are not, first prints. And a lot of expectations with doing this. And turns out, I think I'm a little outside the box with what a lot of other people have been talking about with the book. So I'm going to quickly try to run through this and not drag you through it and everything with what I read here. Okay, in 1980 I turned 7 years old. And I kind of feel like I had 2 childhoods, the 70s and the 80s. And if I had to pick which ones, which one I'd rather, was better, in my opinion, it was the 70s, okay? And, I've done videos where I talked about, I've been reading comics since I was 4 and everything, so you can do the math. And then this Saga book came up. And there's a comic book channel you need to check out, a great guy named Constant Bromstar. When I first started hearing about this Saga book, he described it as, 70s heavy metal. Okay. What is great about that quote is that if I had never heard him say that, I would also come up with the same comparison. Okay. Now, when this book Saga came out, and they were all the hype that was following, man, I didn't catch it. All of a sudden this book comes out on a Wednesday, everybody's praising it, the thing sells out. I'm kind of left behind there, and actually was a blessing in disguise because I ended up getting the first 3 issues to where I got the first issue, kind of flipped through it, then I got 2 and 3 yesterday, and I think it was a more satisfying read in order to review just looking at the first 3 issues. At the time that I'm recording this, I think issue 5 is either out or getting ready to come out. Okay, so I'm not really that far behind. And with all the reviews here on YouTube, I know what happened in issue 4, which I'll probably lead into this. Now, with that said, this book had the hype behind it was that it was like, the new Star Wars or something. This thing was really heavily influenced by Star Wars. Brian K. Vaughan has wrote this, and Fiona Staples has drawn it, and she's drawn it beautifully. I think we're all expecting Fiona Staples maybe the brand new star of this year so far. And in my opinion, so the book comes out, and that hype actually hindered my reading when I sat down and read this. Okay, I came into the mindset that this is just sci-fi, this is just that. I'll be honest with you, man, I was really just not connecting with what this story was. Okay, and with that said, what happened was I went into this thing. Brian K. Vaughan wrote Y the Last Man, and he wrote for TV and stuff, and he's a pretty good writer. People are expecting big things. So when I started reading this book, I'm sitting here reading it like it's just a sci-fi story, and I've got Star Wars in the back of my mind, and that is completely wrong. This book feels more like it's bringing out some nostalgia from that when I was in the 70s as a kid and stuff, leading up into the 80s. When I read this book, I felt like it was like the return of heavy metal, and I'm going to show you what heavy metal is and briefly tell you, man. Heavy metal is was originally a French magazine, sci-fi, horror, and it had sex in it and stuff. Okay, and of course it was in France when it started out, and actually the translation for the original magazine was Howling Metal. And how's that for serendipity? So this guy who publishes National Lampoon in the mid-70s goes over to France to kind of establish the National Lampoon version, French version of the book, of that magazine. And he runs across this book, and he's able to get it over to America in 1977. And if I remember right, those were some of the issues that I read when I was a kid, right when I was starting to read comics. My uncle and my stepdad and them all of a sudden started bringing in these magazines, and it was like Monsters, the Filmland, and then Fangoria, and then there's this book Heavy Metal amongst all these, Silver Age Marvel books and, DC and Marvel stuff and everything like that. And I'm flipping through those, and I'm way too young to be reading them. There's no doubt about it, but I could tell this was heavy. This was heavy stuff. This was a big deal. Okay, so I feel like this really. So I'm reading this book, and so yeah, it's supposed to be influenced by Star Wars, which was something in the '70s, but it's got heavy metal here. Just to give you an idea, here's some heavy metal magazines. Now, when heavy metal first came out and stuff, it was the French stories translated into English for us and stuff. And even in a Doctor Who episode, Girl in the Fireplace, Doctor Who even says France is a world all of its own. So we get this fresh, artistic, underlying erotic tales with these artists we've never heard of. And along the way, heavy metal added to these artists. Man, we got introduced to, in my opinion, Mobius. And then there was H.R. Geiger of Aliens fame. And then they brought in Richard Corbin and Esteban Morant. There's a guy named, we'll get back to him. And then they started bringing in American concepts and stuff, man. Like this very issue here, with this beautiful cover, has Bernie Wrightson art in it. Okay? Bernie Wrightson jumped in there. So, it started bringing in another outlet for these comic book illustrators to come in and do a different kind of story. And these stories were out of the box. These stories were more original. Some of these aliens in here that Bernie's drawing, to me can probably pop right into Saga and fit right in. Some of the landscapes and everything. And I could go through each of these books and you'll just be amazed what's in there. Scary Dreams. I mean, so on and so forth. And I love these magazines growing up. And in the 80s they declined. And for you Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fans, Peter Laird now owns the book and is publishing it, I think, is the right word. One of my favorite covers there. Around the time Howling and American Werewolf in London was hitting, and right there, this chick right here could just walk right out into Saga, as well as this one. You notice a lot of them. How did 1984 get in there? Look at the wings and everything like that. In one of our main characters in Saga, she has wings. So to me, it's all there in the landscapes and everything. I'll show you a little bit of the humor they had in there. Okay, so to break it down, make sure I get this right. Basically, it's two characters, Alana and Marco. They're from two different planets. Their planets are at war, and what I'm not clear on is the planets sort of depend on each other. Okay, and they've been at war for a very long time. And they can't just blow up each other because, the planets are synced. It'll destroy the other one. So they've taken a few liberties and stuff. And on one planet, the one that Elena is from, it's more technology based, and the one that Marco's from, it's more magic based. Okay, so right there, writing wise, we have technology versus magic. Okay, now Marco was a prisoner, and he got with Elena. And I think they spent half a day together, 12 hours or something like that. That's what it says. Yeah, 12 hours together. And they take off. She lets him out. And they get together, and then the story picks up with the birth of their baby, and Marco's like chewing the umbilical cord off. Okay, so they've got the whole universe against them. And as things take off, they start introducing characters, the television head people, which everybody's been talking about, and it was pretty graphic. But we have nudity in this, and we have Elena like breastfeeding her baby, and then the next nudity that we have are the television people. Pretty graphic, whoops, there we go. You know, pretty graphic stuff there and everything like that. You know, and you know, people got a kick out of that. And as they move on and stuff, you know, they're getting attacked. Creatures are, you know, people are getting hired to come after them. Not only are there worlds after them, they want the baby, from what I can tell, but there are bounty hunters coming in, but they're called freelancers, and we get the will. And while the will's getting a transmission, you know, we start hearing other people, you know, the stalk and stuff that can come after him. And he decides not to go after them because of the stalk, which we get introduced to that character later. Now, the will is pretty much a freelancer, and he has a lying cat. Cat can detect lies, which I thought was fabulous. And right there they got a seahorse alien, which I just think is freaking awesome and stuff. And you know, they're talking about bringing them in and bringing the baby in and stuff. Meanwhile, you know, even the planet is against these two while they're trying to get away. You know, to get up in these binds and stuff in this forest, and the forest is supposedly haunted. So, you know, as we're picking up through there, we start to get to know these characters. And Elena and Marco are just, you know, they're in love and they've had this baby, and all of a sudden, man, it's already just been, it's just everything they can do to stay together because it's like everything is against them. Does that kind of sound familiar in real life? And right there's the trick with this book. This book, the whole hype behind it really had me conflicted with what I was reading, man. I wasn't just getting this book, and everybody's talking about how great it is and stuff, and I'm just really not seeing it. And then I read the stuff, and it's great writing because it's a personal story. The story is really about relationships, okay? I think Brian K. Vaughan is writing some of the most honest material that he's ever had. I feel like he's working through stuff. The book has momentum. The book is going somewhere. You can tell all these pieces are going to dovetail, and we're going to have an ending. You know, where this is going to make a lot more sense how everything fits in. I don't think Marco and Elena should be together, and actually they're my two least favorite characters. To me, they're in the way. There are eyes as we travel, you know, through the sci-fi world, and they're the motivation for everybody. They're the target for everybody, so we can see all these characters coming in. But I really don't like them. First of all, Elena is, it's almost like the traditional gender roles are kind of reversed. I heard that somewhere along the line with somebody whose wife had read it, and she picked up on it, and she's absolutely right. But Elena really still comes off, she's supposed to be like a strong woman, and Marco's more passive, and you know, he's a magician, more, you know, I guess organic, more, you know, nature-like, you know, and they're supposed to be, that they're aliens, it's the planet they come from. But I have huge problems with strong female characters who are written to display strength as being a bitch, as being abrasive. Part of strength comes from grace and maturity to go along with that. Okay? The veil of strength and the demeanor of being a bitch are just two different things, and people get them confused. Now, I feel like there's a lot of insecurity in here with her, and that's where a lot of this comes from, and maybe that's character development. Maybe they're getting somewhere. And then we have Marco, who just, I don't know, he just, I'm not connecting with him a bit. He's just too passive. I mean, he's trying to take responsibility. He's more the emotion of the two of them. Every time that, there's nothing wrong with that, but I just don't feel like the story's about them. The story's about their baby, obviously, you know, and surviving with the baby, but they just get in the way. I have liked everything and everybody else that has popped up around them. This book has actually kind of got me sort of cheering for the bad guys. So as we go on and stuff, you figure out that the will, he refers to the stalk. He quits the job because they're bringing in the stalk. And, you know, you kind of assume that it's just another man and stuff because he won't go anywhere near it. He announced he's going to sextillion. Then we get introduced to the stalk. This character, and maybe this says more about me than anything else, has no arms, kind of like a Venus de Milo is what I'm seeing here. Spider eyes, long white hair, a little bit of a crown and a skirt, and it's supposed to be grotesque and inhuman, but I think she's absolutely beautiful. You know, and you know, she sucks them right in, man, and then, you know, we see she's out to kill him. This is the stalk. Apparently the will and her had a relationship. So now we have Elena and Marco's relationship, and now we have the Will's relationship. We got the TV people's you know, relationship, and we got this Prince going out, Prince 4. He's one of the television people. And here's what's amazing, man. These are all aliens. Elena's race is technology based. They have wings. You saw, we said that, and then we have Marco's race, magic, and they all have horns of some kind. Really playing the nature thing up. Yet we have the television people who look the most inhuman with their big TV machine heads, and to me they act the most human. I mean, I'm kind of wondering if that's us. They're more of the basic, even though they're all regal and in power and everything like that, they seem to have the basest human emotions. They're not deep, man. They don't have layers and stuff, but it's like they react with the most emotion out of all of this. They're the lust, they're the anger, they're the sex. So basically they're the emotional range, and I feel like the TV screens every now and then when we see things is displaying that emotion. They wear their emotions on their sleeves. Okay. So things move on, and Marco, more or less gets hurt, and all of a sudden they kind of ruined the stalk for me because she starts running out of this forest because of the horrors. She described that the horrors in this forest, she had seen them rip the spine out of a man through his urethra, and she starts running. And she, all of a sudden, the horrors pop up, and we see that it's ghost kids. Alright, and now to move on, because I don't want to drag through all this, we're already at 15 minutes and stuff, but this is when things start getting thick with the, things aren't what we see. The horrors apparently say they cast illusions to get the job done, and referring to them as ghosts is racist and stuff. And even though this has a 70s feel in it, Brian K. Vaughan still made it feel modern to a certain extent because they have cell phones. The stalk is getting chased by wild boars and calling up the wheel, and he's not going to help her. He's never going to talk to her. And then you have the lying cat. When he says he's never going to talk to her or pick up the phone for her or something like that, the cat's like lying. And here's the complication of the relationships. You can tell something went down, and he still loves her, and she's more or less moved on. And it appears that she's just calling him when she needs something. So Brian K. Vaughan has wrote a very, and I'm going to leave it at that. I don't have issue 4 to throw in there, but basically, as what I've seen with that, here's a man hurting from a relationship, and it's really a lot feels like it's pulled from real life, even though it's thrown into a sci-fi story. Great sci-fi stories are set in a future or a world different than ours, yet they still go on with social commentary, what's going on now in the present and stuff. I've said that before, I'm like a broke record. So he takes off to a planet called Sextillion when he hears that, his ex-lover has popped up, and that's going to be the answer, is just throwing yourself out there for sex and stuff. And I know issue 4 didn't work out that way. So basically we got a lot of deep stuff here, and that's what I'm picking up on Saga, man. That's why it's building up to me. This is personal. And when you're writing subject matter about relationships and stuff, this is going to touch a lot of people based on their experiences with relationships. He's got a wide veil where he's exploring it. A couple trying to stay together, they got together too quick, had a baby all of a sudden. You got a couple that apparently have split up, and one still has feelings and the other one knows that she can play on that. And then you have the TV people who are the basis of emotions and stuff. They're not really deep so far, but it's everything that makes us get hooked into a relationship, So Brian K. Vaughan has wrote something real personal. It's going to touch a lot of people. Now, do I think it's the great savior of comics, or did it live up to all the hype and stuff? And that's not fair. I don't think it lived up to the hype, but that's the problem with hype. You have something that's really good and people know it. And I'm not saying it ruined the book, but it made me approach the book at the wrong angle. I couldn't take it for what the work was. And that took, reading all 3 of them in a row finally, and I had to think about it. I was already, looking left when I should have been looking straight ahead. So it's kind of like being in the desert. With the way the last couple months, a lot of the comics have really been disappointing people and been real bland. And I'm not going to sit here and put down comics and stuff. These things happen in cycles. But I heard a quote in a movie or a TV show that this is what it feels like. When you're in the desert and you're thirsty, you stay thirsty long enough, people can give you a glass of sand, tell you it's water, and you'll drink it, and you'll trick yourself into being satisfied. Saga isn't sand, it's pixie dust. Okay? It tastes good, And, I recommend buying the book. It is a solid story. Just ignore the hype. And the other thing is that, oh my goodness, 2 other influences here. I think I messed up. To help with this, make it feel like the 70s, is the heavy metal movie with all the alien encounters and the stories that you can't get in front of, and Wizards was technology versus like nature, technology versus magic and stuff. And this has great stuff on Ralph Bakshi, Von Bode, a great 70s artist, underground artist, and then his brother took over years later, and some Mike Plug in here. Just want to throw that out there. But take with what you will with Saga, and realize that, you know, I don't think it should have been called Saga. I think it should have been called Journey, because this book has got momentum. It's going somewhere. We're exploring relationships, and you got to kind of approach it like that, with the beautiful artwork of Fiona Staples, man, just making this thing feel fresh and everything. So this book, I have absolutely no problem for continuing to collect it there. Now I got off track a little bit, and I apologize, but I'm on lunch break and I got to go. So, all right, thanks guys.